Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across time.
Good evening. I'm Vivian Crawford, and I'm here with my co-host, former Pennsylvania State Representative Babette Joseph. Welcome, Babby.
Thank you so much.
This is an interesting evening for us because we are joined by a panel that we expect to have a lot of heated conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward.
I am also. So I'm going to start to introduce our panel. Seated to my right, my far right, is Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. Welcome, Justice Holmes.
Great to be here, Ms. Crawford.
And seated next to Justice Holmes is President Teddy Roosevelt. President Roosevelt is the person that actually nominated you to the Supreme Court. Welcome, President
Thank you,
Roosevelt.
President Roosevelt.
It's my pleasure, by the way. Bullied.
Now, to my far left is Justice Thurgood Marshall, and as we all know, that's someone that I just admire so, and I welcome you back to the show. Welcome, Justice Marshall.
A pleasure to return, thank you.
Seated next to Justice Marshall is Justice Antonin Scalia. Welcome, Justice Scalia.
Hello.
We want to jump right in recent Supreme Court decisions, and we're met with a unique question as a result of these decisions. And that is, have the rights guaranteed pursuant to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 been removed or overshadowed by the Citizens United decision of 2010? And just for the purpose of helping our audience with this, you'll see a card, and it explains pretty much what Citizens United is. The issue that they decided upon is, should such expenditures be permitted as an exercise of freedom of speech? Holding, the Supreme Court decided that such expenditures were protected under the First Amendment as free speech. So I think it's pretty clear that has certainly done a lot to voting rights, and I'd like to hear you gentlemen just jump in and let us know how you feel about that.
Well, I'd like to ask Justice Scalia, can I refer to you as Justice Scalia?
Yeah, well, that's what I am, so you might as well.
Well, after we're finished, I may refer to you as something else, but right now I'll refer to you as Justice Scalia. What was your reasoning when you concurred with the majority saying that money and speech are the same thing?
Because that's how it works in Washington, as you should well know. All these corporations got the money out to influence elections. That's the way it works. Live with it.
Are you suggesting that what happened here was a political decision and not a legal decision?
Hey, it's Washington. You should know that very well, Mr. President.
I do know that very well, but that's why there's a separation of powers. And the judiciary's in one area, and they're supposed to decide on the law. I only had 1 year of law school, not like you eminent gentlemen who were sitting on the Supreme Court, but I know that much. And it should be decided on the law. And by the way, that decision is really awful in terms of voting rights, because
there's no right to vote. It's a privilege. I don't believe it. Excuse me, I'm talking. Shut up. I believe that. I don't believe every schmuck that crawls out of the street is qualified to vote. Let's put it like that.
But
regardless of the fact, regardless whether it's a right or a privilege, this decision went way beyond what it could have. The decision was, the problem here was whether or not this film, really when you look at it, whether this film was an expression of freedom of speech. And even I would have to admit, even though it was a negative film in regard to Hillary Clinton, it still was an expression of free speech, right, and would be guaranteed under the Constitution. But to extend the expenditures for that film to corporations is going beyond what the holding of this case should have been. And that's why it's critical that you can explain to us beyond political reasons why in the judicial and legal sense this was the proper thing to do.
I think what the president's trying to say is, what was your legal reasoning to reach that conclusion not your political reasoning, and not siding with your elite
What cases?
business class.
What
Because
cases
that's the
did
way
you
it
base
is.
it on?
Like I said, that's simply the way
You need
it
case
is.
law.
Excuse me, I'm talking. Be
You
quiet.
need precedent.
I'll tell you precedent. That's corporations running Washington has been going on from the beginning of the Republic. That's the way it's been. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it will remain. And you liberals better get used to that fact.
You are a
Wait a second.
curator of an attitude that defaces the honor of the court. There is no
Thank you,
legal
Justice Marshall.
precedent that this is a case where you should have actually recused yourself.
I don't have to recuse myself when I don't want to.
I understand,
that's
and
clear,
this,
but you
and
should
this
have.
is part of the
I
moral
decide what I
evidence.
should have done.
But
You went against your own principles because you describe yourself as an originalist and somebody who literally looks at the Constitution and treats it literally. And in this case, you went beyond the literal meaning of freedom of speech to extend freedom of speech to spending by corporations. Now, how you can read that in the Constitution as an originalist and a literal translator of the Constitution is beyond me and probably beyond these
Everybody.
other eminent
Could you give
jurists
us
that
some
are here
insight
today.
as to how you drew that conclusion
Exactly.
outside of some of the pleasures of your bedfellows?
What are you talking about?
Well,
What-
Justice
You
Scalia,
know
it's very
perfectly
clear.
well.
Here's what we know. We know that you and Justice Thomas attended events sponsored by the Koch brothers. We also know that the Koch brothers are conservative, and they
Put it
spend-
mildly.
To put it mildly, and they spend millions to advance their legal perspective. I mean, and so that it seems to me that you and Justice Thomas, who I can't refer to as anything but Uncle Thomas, you and Uncle Thomas
I'm glad you said that.
show up at events that are sponsored by the Federalist Society and the Koch brothers, and then you turn around and you rule on cases that impact them. I mean, I don't understand how we are to sit here and think that you, as a representative on the Supreme Court, have done anything but advance corporate interests.
Because those are the people who run the economy and provide us with the lifestyle we enjoy.
So do you
Justice Scalia, now I'm not going to refer to you after this as Justice Scalia. I'm going to refer to you as Justice Hippo.
For what?
Because even though you're obese and corpulent, that's not why I'm referring to you as Justice Hippo. I'm referring to you as Justice Hippo because you're a hypocrite.
I
Many
deal with
of your
reality.
decisions are strictly in line with the Constitution, but in this case, you extend the Constitution. You extend the meaning of individuals to apply to corporations to fulfill your own classes.
He very rarely, I think,
I
very
know
rarely
what I
had a
do, madam.
constitutional argument. His arguments were self-results.
Right,
He
and-
wanted a result, and then he
That's what
made the
matters in
reasoning.
the real world.
What
when
matters
they
in
have
the real
results.
world
Early
is
on
that
in my career, I said justices have to get away from their class and economic prejudice when they rule on cases. And you're a perfect example of not doing that. You always rule the way you want it to come out, what your class and what the people that back you, the conservatives, want. And you never rule really on the law and what the Constitution means. And you're a hypocrite.
And the English common law always took the side of masters over servants.
Hopefully, the consequences of this decision are so egregious to allow corporations to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in the election process when it denigrates what everything America's about. I mean, they're taking away the right to vote from individuals and giving it in the hands of the top
Well-
1% who have all the money to spend and put it into the election.
Taking
So what's
away
going
the
to
right-
happen?
Nothing to do
What's
with
going to
it.
happen? I'll
Taking
tell you
away
what's
the
going to
right to
happen.
vote is something
There's
else.
in the very, very near future, somebody is going to leave the court, and the majority of the court will change from a conservative court to a liberal court or a real right-thinking court, and this decision will go by the wayside. And hopefully, it'll be the platform generally for a complete change of campaigning, campaign rights, and how we conduct the elections in this country, which is supposed to be a democracy, and which this decision did everything that it could to do
the Constitution
away with
says
democracy.
nothing about democracy. We have been organized as a republic. Democracy has nothing to do with the founding of this country or the organizing of the Constitution.
The power from the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence is in the people. Not in the corporations, in the people.
Justice Holmes.
Did you ever see the people?
Justice Holmes would be among the first to present the one person, one vote. This is the fundamental foundation of our democracy, and I think that what the questions from our esteemed colleagues point to you and your legal reasoning for having this particular position. You have removed rights from individuals and given them to corporations.
Some people shouldn't have rights. Some people abuse rights.
This decision did not directly impact on an individual voting. That came later. What this did, it seems to me, is put all the money in one basket, and we know how influential that is over votes.
What this did was to create the circumstance that would take power from individuals and adjust it to the power of the corporations.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking that your absence of legal reasoning implies reasoning of another kind, and I think that the curiosity,
what reason? It's just reality.
Your reality perverts American values.
Berating Justice Scalia really doesn't do this issue justice. What he did with his compatriots, and it's done. What we have to do is redo it somehow and reshape the whole election process so that it's fair.
And do you think
the election process today
are going to accept
if I would have thought when
way.
I was
We're
president that it would turn to this as ridiculous.
Are you satisfied
Justice
that the
Hippo.
elite, because of your ruling, can control the electoral process?
It's just the
Let
way
me
it is
finish,
in the real
Justice Hippo.
world.
Problems we have now where the elite control the legislative and the courts, and they make decisions favoring the 1%, the very wealthy, and this leads to more and more income inequality.
Equality, that's not in the world. And that's
And
not in the
unrest.
real world. Do you want everybody to be at the same damn level?
Yes.
No,
At the
but I
same
want
damn,
everybody to be on the
you think
same level
economy?
playing
It's
field.
not the way it works.
Mr. President, I think you
everybody
make
to
a
be
good
on the
point.
same level playing
The
field.
rules have to
And
be
you don't
fair,
put
and
a-
the rules aren't fair.
When you start out,
Well, things in the world's not fair,
you
Mr. President.
in
as
your-
you
another
know.
your
president
concurring
said one
opinion,
time.
You equate speech with money, and you're saying it's the same thing, and then there's absolute no restriction on election speech or political speech. That's what you're saying. But in fact,
Same thing.
what your ruling in effect does, it allows the rich, the powerful, to have more of a say. They speak with a megaphone, and the downtrodden that don't have money speak in a whisper, and that's uneven playing field.
But that wasn't even good enough. Then they went after the Voting Rights Act.
Right. That's
Right.
That, and that's
And
the next step.
as if you
In
know,
Shelby
the
County,
ordinary
sure.
individual had some power left.
So
So
it should
they
be-
went after the Voting Rights Act,
The
and you helped.
The
you
so-called
helped-
when I
people
ruled
at
one
the-
man,
that
one
we
vote.
make
You
such a
helped kill
big
it.
that we make such a big cult about
Even-
are just ignorant. They don't give a rat's ass about
wait a
the
minute.
economy
I think
or the
President-
politics. Excuse me. Excuse me.
You
They
are
just
excused. I
There's
believe
no
that the
excuse.
president makes a good point, that
Yes.
our bickering with Justice Scalia's questionable angle on logical thinking as relates to jurisprudence and American values is not the issue. The issue is how is it that we can focus our American value on one person, one vote? How can we equitably distribute the power of the electorate? And I believe that Mr. President has presented the case for
Yes.
the
And
repeal.
let me just take it one step
And
further.
I would hope
And the
that-
issues go beyond spending on a campaign, by the way, because what's happened as a result of that is you put in your people, and your people gerrymander their districts.
goodness.
Gerrymander their districts in the states.
Do you think that people care?
Oh,
No, they don't.
So that they can,
Which
so that
people
they
do
can
you
act,
mean?
so they can get
Are
their
these
people in
idiots who
and
sit in
enact
front of the
regressive
TV?
voting rights legislation.
Yes,
That take away the right to vote, which is a right, and take away the right to vote from
Hey, some people
segments of
shouldn't
our
be allowed to
population.
vote. Some people shouldn't
Citizens.
be allowed to vote. Some people shouldn't be allowed to vote.
So-
if the people just stay home.
In your original interpretation now, you want to go back to 1789, and you only want property owners to have the right to vote.
It'd be
You
better
would
And
not
men.
want-
We
you
would
White
be
men.
better.
want women to have the
As a
right to
country.
vote. You would not want
No, women-
African Americans to have the right to vote. That's-
Hey, have you ever seen how they vote? I mean,
They
it's
vote
just.
for Democrats.
That's right, Democrats, and
Yes,
they vote for
because
more
they're
welfare.
not
Yes,
stupid.
and they vote for more welfare, more stuff for themselves. What? And
Your
because-
ignorance continues to exceed
Why
itself.
are we even discussing this with him?
I would
He's
like
so
to.
out of the mainstream, it's ridiculous.
I would like
You're
to.
out of the mainstream.
I'm in the mainstream, and I've
I
always
would
was
like
in the
to-
mainstream.
to
I
the-
foresaw all of this 100 years ago.
Sherman Annie
What-
Trust.
the
It's
issues
sti-
between
it's still there,
conservation,
and it's still happening,
conservation,
and you're just gonna
and
it's gonna
development,
continue forever.
globalization,
So like I said, you better
and
deal with it.
isolation. I saw this 100 years ago.
It's
All
not-
of these things
It's
enacted on
never
it then.
going to end. It's
And it's a
never going to
disgrace
end.
that people like you have taken over now to denigrate this great country that we're in.
As Native Americans gather even now for
Right.
the
Oh, yes.
new version of what's
A
happened
bunch of
with-
tree-hugging savages.
Excuse
No.
me, sir. As Native Americans gather even now with this new version of the impetus for the Sherman Act, this should move us into the direction of focusing on how to reclaim our democracy. I believe that pieces of action need to be taken that will reclaim our value, the value of one person, the value of one vote, the value of individuals to be able to,
The value-
to determine what happens with
The
the
value
earth, with
of-
the planet,
of
the value
making-
of being able to have corporations not make decisions that are only for themselves and who
It's the
rob
way
America.
it works in the
I'm
economy.
aware
Hey,
of the
shut up.
way it works.
I'm-
I'm aware of the way it works. And
The way
your-
it works in
your
the real world
arrogance
is that
and your rudeness do not make your point correct.
If the way it works is you let the corporations do whatever they want, they make their profit, we all benefit.
The way it
That's
works
the way
is-
it always
the
works.
way it works
Who
is
we?
one
I want to
person.
ask you this: who is we? And I'm sorry,
We,
Justice.
all the
Nobody's
so-called
against
American
corporations
people, you're
making
making
profit
such a
and succeeding in
goddamn
business.
cull about
But why do they have to get involved in politics? That's the whole thing.
Because socialistic idiots like you, yes, you too, Mr. President, pandering to the so-called lower classes, to protect.
I take that as
you're
a
an upper
compliment.
class
Protecting
man
the rights
yourself.
of those who need protection.
Justice Thurgood Marshall asked you a question. Why are you unable to answer the questions that have been put before you, other than to say this is the way that it's always been?
Because it is.
Justice
Because-
Like
Scalia.
I said, and that's the way it's always
Sounds
been.
like Donald Trump,
and that's
doesn't
the
he?
way it's always going
Your
to be.
reasoning removes
exactly
honor
like Donald
from
Trump.
our office.
Yes,
What reason and what honor? We're talking
Your
about Washington here, folks.
reasoning
you
removes
think-
honor from our office.
Do you think money in politics has influence on people's decision?
Of course it does.
Therefore, if the corporations have unlimited access and can spend unlimited funds in terms of effecting an election,
And some of them
that would
anonymously.
present a danger to the country and to democracy. Would you agree with that?
No, it wouldn't.
Why wouldn't present a clear and present danger, sir?
The Russian Revolution
What's that have to
was.
do with
Excuse me. If you just be quiet, I explain it to you, okay? The
Now
Russian
you're acting
Revolution.
like it
hey,
is about-
the
It was a
Russian
difficult
Revolution it ushered in a regime that was
We're wasting
supposed to
our
be
time
for
listening to this.
the people, the workers, but it
But it wasn't.
benefited
Big
this,
deal.
but led to this dictatorship of this one political party. That's what's going to happen if we keep up with this democracy thing.
This
in
this
other
filibuster is
words,
ridiculous.
A dictatorship
Let's
of the
get down to the
proletariat
important
is
facts
worse
here.
than the
Forget about that.
Dictatorship of the 1% who control 90% of the wealth. Is
It'd be
that
a
what
lot
you're
better
saying?
than a dictatorship like in Russia.
See, if his friends are the dictators, he doesn't
That's
care.
okay.
Madam
Right, that's
Moderator,
okay.
may
Our
we
dic-
pursue the point of
Yes.
being able to show a way forward from
Yes.
this place that Justice Scalia in such an animated way displays the ignorance and the selfishness of such thinking. I believe that if we were able to focus ourselves on solutions, that it would be a better discussion. And one such solution
Yes.
would involve the appointment of another justice, since the court as it stands now is inoperative. But for us to be able to repeal, or for the legislature to bring to the court
Absolutely.
some option for
Absolutely.
adjusting this
There-
egregious circumstance.
I
Justice
would rather
Marshall's
have
absolutely
a
correct.
do-nothing
There could
court
be-
and a
there
do-nothing
could be a
Congress that doesn't make
legislative
any
remedy to this,
decisions
there
There
against
is a
the free
legislative
enterprise
remedy
system.
to it.
Let's
Yes.
talk about
First-
legislative remedy.
Well, first of all, I think that the main legislative remedy would have to be, first of all, we have to do something about gerrymandering. I think that we federally, because it is an issue, it becomes an issue for Congress and everything else, that they can institute legislation. I think it would be constitutional.
Just one
to
law
make
after another. That's the
to
way
make
you liberals
sure
work.
that- to make
Give the
sure
president
that in the states, all of the districts are equal in population, and they're regularly drawn, and wherever that
Competitive.
lies, that's where it lies.
They need to be competitive.
They can be. They do need to be competitive, and I think that should be a right of all this of everybody, of all the people in the right. Secondly, there should be a total amount of money that can be spent by each party. The federal election process for president should not last 18 months to 24 months. It should last for 6 months, and have the debates go on and spend as little money as possible on it. But the money should be spent equally between Republicans, Democrats, and if Libertarians want to be in there, or Rough Riders or whatever, they would have the same amount of money.
Greens, blues,
And I think
yellows.
we would have a much fairer result, and the people, the citizens of this country, would be the determining factor as to who their representative should be,
Yeah,
both in Congress, the
Could-
Senate, and of course the president.
I want to describe to people briefly how the Pennsylvania legislature reapportioned the congressional districts last time around. I was on the committee, I was the minority chairperson. We got a bill, I don't remember the number, all printed up in a nice little booklet. Maybe it was bill number 666, let's call it 666. And it said on the front that we would be seeing the description, both visual and in words, of the districts in the federal congressional districts in Pennsylvania. Well, you looked at this thing and you opened it up. It was blank. It was blank. There were no words there.
Wait. I want to make sure we get that, to make that clear. So that you as a member
Of the legislature,
were
of this
presented
committee,
were presented with what it is you should vote on in
Blank.
a book, and it was blank.
it was blank.
And what was the vote?
The vote was all the Democrats voted no because we didn't know what the districts would be by looking at those blank pages, but there weren't enough of us. So we challenged the ruling of the chair, but that's a decision of the body, and there weren't enough of us to challenge the ruling of the chair. So
Now,
after
do you see
it
what
went,
you're up against?
after
wait a
it
minute.
went
Well, that's why the
through
rules
the
should be
whole
changed.
process blank, with the Democrats complaining terribly, but who paid
There's a-
attention
there's a-
because it wasn't sexy enough for the press.
But-
Listen, the whole
Then
This is
issue
why
it's
of
voting
some-
rights
gerrymandering-
are so important.
At some end process, they stuck in these gerrymandered congressional districts. They broke them up so that even though Pennsylvania has 2 or 3 times as many Democrats as Republicans,
Not quite as
there
much, but
are
they-
3 or 4 times as many Republican districts than there are
Well,
Democratic
that's the
districts.
problem. That's exactly the
that
problem with
stinks.
gerrymandering.
And unless
That
unless-
stinks.
Party
That
in
reminds me
power,
of Justice
the
Scalia.
party in power
what?
has the right, obviously, to gerrymander those districts so that they stay in power.
But-
Now, that's not right.
But
They have to be done
Only on the
equally
congressional
There's
level.
only-
and
It's-
proportionally so that everybody
In
has a chance.
Pennsylvania, it's different for the state legislature.
every
I'm
state-
only
there's-
talking
there's
about
only
the
3
congressional.
remedies.
I'm sorry?
We can get appoint a associate justice to the Supreme Court that would help overturn the decision. We can legislate, which I would favor, and I've always deferred to the legislative process. We can pass a new campaign finance law. We can pass a new law that would outlaw
Voting rights
gerrymandering.
again, right.
We can pass a law that would strengthen the Voting Rights Act, and we can, which is much harder to do, we can overturn Citizens United.
Rules, regulations, law, that's all you liberals know how to do.
What Babette Joseph just said, and what happens is, based on your decision, we become a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's going to continue and get worse because the people in power, once they achieve power, gerrymander, use more money to finance elections, get more power
don't do
that
it.
allows them to
Don't bother with it.
gerrymander more and to finance more elections that gives them more power, so it's a self-fulfilling thing. We must stop it
In
now.
the meantime,
Destroy
We
our
just got
democracy.
in the
accepted
meantime, we
as it
have
is.
what, a half a
Government, I know you
million
don't
more?
like government, but government can be the mediator between these things, between conservation and development, between capital and workers, between isolationism and globalism. And government can be the mediator. Either one of those propositions by itself might be bad or might be good, but probably a mix of both would be the best. And
might
that's
be
where government comes in.
It
And
might
the
be-
legislative branch, along with the judicial branch, along with the executive branch, can set those laws to make sure that the people, the citizens, have their right to have who they want elected as their representatives, and that's what's important.
I was elected for 28 years. I was elected 14 times, and that's why I really think that for the most part, the voters know what they're doing. And I do have...
That's a self-serving statement. But
Yes.
I'll take that.
I do have faith in the voters. The voters are now, they have been stripped of their power through the vitiation of the Voting Rights Act, through the court and the Republicans now, I'm sure the Democrats did it in past years, gerrymandering as many districts as possible, packing people they think are Democrats into very thick districts, and then making these big winding ones where they can get a majority of Republicans. And that's how they do those things. And then in Pennsylvania and in many other states, the Republicans have instituted requirements for voting.
Right. They were
In
able to
our
pass laws that
state-
would never been able to pass.
In our state, they
Unconstitutional.
wanted a photo ID. Well, the
What's
people
wrong
who
with
like
that?
to, people who are generally Democratic voters are likely, as a population, not to have a photo
Well, that's
ID.
not our
That's
problem.
what's wrong with it. Yes, it is.
Madam
And in
Moderator, this-
Pennsylvania, we knocked that down.
This entire discussion actually outlines why it is so important for people to vote.
Yes.
The right to vote is being
Privilege, not
challenged.
right.
The right to
It's a
vote
right
from a
to vote.
Right to vote is a
constitutional
right.
perspective
In Pennsylvania,
that
it's a
is
right.
more educated, I imagine, than yours.
Justice
would
Scalia, why isn't the
reflect
right to
the
vote-
fact that the
why
right to
isn't the
vote,
right to vote
the right
a
to
right?
vote, the right to vote is under attack.
Yeah.
And so those who have access to that privilege need to exercise it so that situations as the one that Representative Babette
Or maybe they ought to
presents-
just tend to their own business.
Well, our business is that of democracy. Our business is
gotta
to
stop.
represent ourselves
Justice
as
Scalia, let me
citizens
ask you
to
one
vote.
question. Do you
And
believe in
we-
democracy?
Oh, here's my
There's
question.
no way we can have him have the last word here.
No.
The right
There's-
to vote is too important.
I don't care.
And that's
Hey.
where we have to go from
And
here.
that's why we must.
And that is exactly why we have to get to the point that we challenge the Citizens United and challenge all of those little roadblocks that you all have put, you and your ilk have put in the way of people who are prepared to exercise their right to vote. But as heated as this discussion is, unfortunately, we're at the end. And I'm going to ask
sick
you
of
to
you
come-
all anyway.
No, we're going to revisit this. So I want to say to our audience, thank you for joining us. This has been hot and heavy. Hope you learned something. Come back next week. I am Vivian Crawford. I thank Babette Josephs, who's always here, my co-host who always brings it, and Justice Marshall.
Citizens Unite
Scalia?
against Citizens United.
Conversations across time, 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 conversations across time.